You know, this is our university. We have to fight for it. We have to do the hard work to fight for it, to keep IU the wonderful educational space that it is, right? Where diverse viewpoints can be expressed, where students can hopefully, you know, reach their goals without having to worry about being physically harmed.
But what becomes dangerous is when you confuse opinion with facts, right? So if you say, you know, no, COVID is not real, that starts becoming dangerous. When you deny climate change, that becomes dangerous. When every single leading human rights organization in the world characterize what's happening in Gaza as a genocide by the state of Israel, to me, then that matters.
If they wanted to start these encampments, that let them be, and we were gonna stand our grounds and just show support of our community and not forget.
You know, if you want to put any kind of a structure up, you have to have 10 days, and that's too long. You know, that's just too long. And the law doesn't say what's required for permission or who grants the permission, what they're basing their decisions on. So that just leaves a lot up in the air that could be at administration's discretion.
Don't impose these draconian rules that are then going to have to be walked back, you know, through this very arduous and probably for IU expensive process of litigation. We need a conversation. My name is Sarah Phillips. I'm a professor of anthropology at Indiana University, and I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina. I finished my PhD a long time ago. That was at the University of Illinois, and a wonderful job opened up here at Indiana, and it was exactly what I was looking for. So I've been here since 2003.
Biographically, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, in a Jewish family, in a secular Jewish Ashkenazi family, but in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. So that was formative for me in many ways.
I've always lived in LA. I kind of just wanted to get out and go somewhere new that I've never been. And the Midwest is something that no LA kid ever thinks about. And I thought it was a really different challenge. And I thought that it was a great place for me to grow. And I think that I was going to be able to find myself here. And I don't think I've made a better choice. I've been really happy ever since coming here. So growing up in LA, I was fortunate enough to go to private Jewish school my entire life, from preschool up until senior year of high school. And I've been learning about Jewish history since first grade, and I've been learning Hebrew since kindergarten. When I first came here senior year, I met the Chabad rabbi and I fell in love with him. So I knew I instantly wanted to come to Chabad. And first day of school, I came here and he's been welcoming with open arms.
So I actually was teaching one of the best seminars I've ever had at IU. There was just a wonderful chemistry in that class, and some of the students were quite active both in the Green Feather movement and in the Palestine Solidarity Coalition. And so in conversations with those students and with some fellow faculty members, I was aware that they were going to start protesting on Dunn Meadow, and that it's likely that an encampment would be a result of those protests. And so I went down to Dunn Meadow on that first day, which was April 27th, to support students, to just see what was going on, and to see what role I could play in supporting the protests, and in specific to support my students.
It was in the flow of conversation here in Chabad. I think we were all kind of in the consensus that this is a very strong community here. We were not getting involved and kind of just staying, happened right across the street of where we are every single day. And I thought we had shown support by just standing our ground, showing what we had wanted, which was returning the hostages. And ultimately, I think that our community did very well in that sense.
the protest itself began at 11 a.m. and I came down earlier, so 10:30 or so, and was talking to Dean Kathy Reister and Chief of Security Ben Hunter and other people. Because when I showed up, there were signs saying, no structures, a list of things, which I knew as of existing and published policy were inaccurate. And that, as a faculty member and someone involved in shared governance, that worried me because that creates potential for misunderstanding.
I was, an advisor to the various student organizations that were helping to, make things happen on campus. There have been a lot of protests and a lot of unrest related to IU's connections with Israel and their refusal to support Palestinian students. And so, as the founder of the Palestine Solidarity Committee during my undergrad, I took an advisory role during my time here as a graduate student. The encampment came out of this national movement where all these schools were doing encampments to protest in solidarity with the people of Gaza who were undergoing a genocide. And the demands of many of these encampments were, of course, divestiture from from anything related to Israel.
My name is Omid Mirzad. I'm from Evansville, Indiana. I'm pretty involved in IU student government. I also started my own club called Students for a National Health Program. I woke up and I went to class and I heard actually first some loud chants coming from Dunn Meadow, and I walked by and I saw that there was an encampment popping up. So my first reaction was I was proud of students here at IU standing up for something that they believe in. My mom, she went to IU actually in the 90s, and she was in the Wittenberger Auditorium watching a movie whenever they suddenly paused the movie and they made an announcement that the US had just declared war in the Gulf. And immediately, half of the attendees got up and they left because they were going to go protest. And very shortly after, there was an encampment. And she actually said that the encampment for the Gulf War it spanned all across Dunn Meadow, and it just dwarfed the one we had actually last spring.
I've been a student, I've been staff, I've been faculty, and I know a lot of people around the Bloomington campus, and I thought that I could be of help. I have been at IU for almost 50 years in one capacity or another, and so I ran for trustee, and I was fortunate to win. The way the trustees are set up, there's 9 trustees, and 6 of them are appointed by the governor, and 3 are elected.
Given the national climate, the administration wanted to prove to the federal government, I guess at this time this was the Biden administration, that they weren't going to allow something like Columbia to happen, which was portrayed in a lot of negative ways. Even people who were sympathetic to us believed that Columbia was some sort of violent, dirty bunch of hooligans just messing shit up.
I was seeing these demonstrations on other campuses like Columbia, UCLA, it was all over the news, and they were a mess. Trash was everywhere and people were violent, and I just wanted to see what ours looked like. And also I had an invitation from a faculty member who said, I'll give you a tour. And I was so impressed with how organized it was and how clean it was.
Things did not turn violent at Indiana University's Dunn Meadow until the state police arrived, and they exacted the only violence that we saw.
The kids, not soldiers! These are fucking kids! These are students!
I didn't expect the level of militarized police that occurred. I expected some police presence, of course, but I didn't expect, SWAT teams, riot shields, shotguns, assault weapons, drones in the sky, helicopters flying, and a sniper on the roof. Didn't expect all that.
It was around noon on Saturday, April 27th, and rushed to the Meadow again, wanting to talk down the police, see if there was anything at all I could do.
We are unarmed! We are unarmed! We are
Ended up getting arrested myself. And just lying there on Dunn Meadow, you know, as someone who loves this university, who, you know, loves being an educator, who loves teaching and learning from students, lying there, you know, prostrate with my hands behind my back, surrounded by Indiana State Police pointing weapons at me. It was just a surreal experience, and honestly, it changed me forever.
For 3 days we had to deal with that. There were 2 days where they swept the camp and arrested lots of people, lots of my friends. On the second day, I myself was arrested and charged with trespassing, I think. I was issued a 5-year ban from the campus. It was originally a 1-year ban, but they bumped it up to 5 years after I asked them to bump it down to 1 day. So after I was banned, I was relegated to the sidewalk, which was city property, which IU can't ban me from, which is right outside of Dunn Meadow.
The solidarity that I felt after that experience from colleagues, students, community members, people across the world really was absolutely phenomenal.
You know, the Monroe County prosecutor went through and looked at all these cases and found that the policy change was constitutionally dubious and, of course, accordingly dropped all charges on us in terms of our bans. So 53 or 56 of us were banned from all IU property, and that's the subject matter of a First Amendment lawsuit.
I just felt like completely left in the dark because in the same 1969 Dunn Meadow policy that like students had helped create, like there was some sort of shared governance going on back in the 1960s. But in that same policy, it said explicitly that perhaps the IUSA president should be included in any ad hoc committee the provost convenes. So the fact that like students were unaware that that was happening and it was being weaponized against students, against faculty, against staff to arrest them, it was just like, it was very disheartening. And I'd already been following like the no confidence votes and like everything leading up to that, where it's just violations of shared governance after like just violations after violations.
One thing that IU did that other schools didn't do was after the protest and the police came in, after all that happened, we wrote a new expressive activity policy, which is not an easy thing to do. There's a lot to take into account. I voted against the policy, and here are my reasons for voting against it. The first one, Dunn Meadow had always been designated as an assembly ground, so you didn't need prior permission in order to go there. That no longer exists under the new policy. I wanted the statement added to it that deadly force would be used only as a last resort. And I'm sorry to say that none of my other trustees seconded that. So we didn't even have a discussion on it.
You know, people want to look at the protest as sort of out of context or as protest alone and not realize that it's part of a very important tradition. So that goes back, you know, to the Civil War on IU campus. There were protests back in the 19th century about the Union versus the Confederacy and about slavery versus freedom. And certainly once we get to the 1960s, when the Dunn Meadow policy was passed, in 1969, you can see how important protest is to the functioning of democracy.
So I did feel like under some scrutiny, obviously, last year because of the chants and the rhetoric when I would pass by walking to class that I would hear because I had a Jewish star on my necklace. I can like hear them in the back being like, oh, like he has a Jewish star, like he has a Jewish star and things like that. And so I did feel like kind of upset that they were saying these things to me, but ultimately I can't let them get under my skin, and that's not how my father and my grandparents would want to let me do it. And so really just going back and showing support of my community and being with here is what I did in response.
Especially in the semester following the encampment, but you know, during that summer, there were all of these like pro-Israel students who would, you know, yell shit at me on campus. I would walk around and be like, you know, like, fuck you, Bryce Green, you're an anti-Semite. It happened, you know, I was walking down the street, someone drove like their car right next to me and they yelled at me and like said, like, you know, fuck you, Bryce Green. I was like, oh, man, what do they think I am?
I kind of want to compliment the DOE for even investigating schools for anti-Semitism. It is a serious problem, but I don't believe it's a very serious problem here. I've personally felt that the university has done very well protecting us and showing support. Just a few weeks ago, we hosted what was called Mega Shabbat. Over 2,000 Jews coming under one tent for Shabbat dinner on Friday night. And President Whitten came and she spoke and she gave a beautiful speech. And she had stayed for all 2 hours and stayed for dinner. And there was no plan for that. I can't thank her enough for everything she has done, really.
Those students that you're trying to silence, they'll just become louder and louder. It's that resistance that you're trying to squelch that will just resist even more. I think a big aspect of feeling supported on campus and being protected on campus, especially in uncertain times like these, with everything that's been going on, is communication and transparency from the administration. And without that, a lot of students can feel uncertain and unsafe.
If you can't protest in college, you know, when can you do it, really? And I just think that's a valuable part of the college experience because it allows people to hear both sides.
Well, certainly the organization has matured. A lot of the people who, started organizing, this was their first time doing anything like activist related. A lot of them are, kind of seasoned, grizzled organizers now, and they're teaching other people these lessons, and they're, making their own moves, getting their own organizations together. And that's really heartening to see.
I was impressed with our faculty. Also, since I've heard some of the faculty members say they stood between the state police and the students. And one faculty member said, I realize now that I would take a bullet for my students. And you have to be proud to have faculty like that.